It was late at night at Earth's deep space listening station. Most of the world was asleep, but Dr. Lena Torres sat alone in the dim control room, her eyes fixed on a wall of screens. The room was silent except for the steady hum of machines and the soft beeping of instruments that tracked radio waves from deep space. Lena had always loved the quiet hours when the world slowed down and only the stars seemed awake. She was young, only 31, but already one of the best astrophysicists in the program. Her work was simple in theory. Listen to the sky, record cosmic noise, look for patterns, but she knew that sometimes in that endless sea of static, something unexpected could appear. That night, something did. At first it sounded like nothing unusual. A faint repeating pulse, like a heartbeat buried under static. Lena leaned forward, adjusting her headset. The rhythm continued, slow, steady, almost human. Her brow furrowed. Pulsars sometimes produced repeating signals, but this wasn't the same. It had a strange order to it, a deliberate structure. She ran the signal through the filter again. The pattern remained clean and intentional. Her heart started to race as she realized it wasn't random. Someone, or something, was trying to say something. She called her assistant, Amir, who had been dozing off in the next room. "Come here," she said quietly, afraid that if she spoke too loudly, the signal might vanish. He shuffled in, rubbing his eyes, and stared at the screen. The signal repeated, faint but steady. They watched it for a full minute before Amir asked, "Is that Morse code?" Lena shook her head. "No, it's too regular. Look at the intervals. It's language, just not one of ours." For the next several hours, Lena worked nonstop. She filtered noise, adjusted frequencies, and ran the signal through every decoding software available. Bit by bit, patterns began to form. When she finally printed the first line of decoded data, she froze. It wasn't a number or a code. It was a word, one word repeated over and over again. "Help." Her hands trembled. "Amir, this isn't just a random transmission." He looked at her, confused. "Then what is it?" Lena's voice was barely above a whisper. "It's a distress call." They checked the coordinates. The signal was coming from a dying star system far beyond any human reach, light years away. There were no known colonies, no human probes, no ships in that region. The signal couldn't be from Earth. That left only one possibility. Lena's heart pounded as she realized what it meant. If it wasn't human, then it was alien. For a few moments, they sat in stunned silence. The idea of intelligent life beyond Earth had always been discussed in theory, but hearing it in real time felt unreal. Amir finally said, "We need to tell command." Lena nodded, already sending the encrypted data to the central network. Within an hour, the control room filled with voices, footsteps, and confusion as senior officials arrived. They questioned Lena endlessly, asking if she was sure it wasn't a technical error or a prank. She showed them the data, the coordinates, the pattern. There was no mistake. The news spread faster than anyone could control. Within 2 days, whispers about the signal leaked online. Journalists started calling it the alien SOS. Governments denied it. Scientists argued on live television, and the public divided into two camps, those who believed and those who mocked the idea. But Lena knew the truth. The signal was real, and it hadn't stopped. Every night it repeated like a desperate cry echoing through the dark. Inside the station, tension grew. The higher-ups tried to silence her team, but curiosity burned too strongly. They wanted to know who or what was asking for help. Lena spent her nights staring at the waveform, imagining what kind of beings could send it. Were they peaceful? Were they in danger? Or was it a trap? The thought kept her awake. Humans had always wanted to know if they were alone in the universe. Now they had an answer, and it scared her. A week later, she managed to decode more fragments. The message wasn't just saying help. There were coordinates, a description of destruction, and strange symbols that looked like warnings. When she presented her findings to the director, he frowned. "You're saying they're dying?" Lena nodded. "Yes, whatever sent this. They're desperate. Something wiped out their world." The director sighed and muttered, "Or they want us to think that." Despite doubts, the world couldn't ignore the signal. Major powers held emergency meetings. Some scientists begged the governments to respond, to send a message back. Others warned that helping unknown beings could be suicide. "We have no idea what's out there," one general argued on international broadcast. "For all we know, it's a trick." But curiosity has always been humanity's weakness. When the unknown calls, humans answer. Lena watched helplessly as her discovery turned into global chaos. Social media exploded with theories. Some said it was an ancient alien civilization. Others said it was a trap set by hostile beings. Religious leaders called it a test of faith. Space agencies received thousands of volunteer messages from people who wanted to help the aliens. But behind all the noise, Lena couldn't shake one feeling. The voice in that signal sounded lonely. It wasn't a monster calling. It was something scared. One night, while reviewing the waveform again, she noticed a faint secondary pulse hiding beneath the main one. It was so quiet it almost went unnoticed. She isolated it, amplified it, and froze. It was a smaller, faster signal embedded inside the main call for help, almost like someone whispering behind a shout. She played it back. The translation software struggled but managed to form one haunting sentence. "They are coming." Lena stared at the screen, her breath caught in her chest. "Who's coming?" she whispered. There was no answer, only the endless repetition of the first message, "Help us." The next morning she tried to warn the board, but they dismissed it as interference. They had already made their decision. They would prepare a team to respond. As the world's space agencies joined hands, the signal grew weaker, almost as if the senders were running out of time. Humanity stood on the edge of something historic. News anchors called it the beginning of first contact. Children drew pictures of aliens holding hands with humans. For a moment, people forgot about war, politics, and fear. Everyone wanted to believe that out there someone needed them, that humans could be the saviors for once. Lena felt pride, but also unease. The signal's energy readings still bothered her. She noticed that each time it was rebroadcast, the frequency shifted slightly, as if it was adjusting, adapting to human technology. She shared her concern with Amir. "It's learning," she said quietly. "Like it knows we're listening." Amir tried to laugh it off, but his eyes showed the same fear she felt. The night before the launch announcement, Lena stood outside the station, looking up at the sky. The stars twinkled cold and distant. Somewhere out there, something was waiting. She couldn't tell if it was good or evil, but she knew one thing for certain. Earth had answered the call. Whatever would happen next, there was no turning back. When she returned to her desk, a final message came through. It wasn't part of the original transmission. It was faint, distorted, but clear enough for her to make out a single new word: "Hurry." That was the moment Lena realized. Whatever was happening out there, it wasn't over. The message had started as a plea, but now it sounded like a warning. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "What have we just stepped into?" The hum of the machines continued around her, steady and calm as if nothing had changed. But Lena knew everything had changed. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, something had spoken, and humanity had finally answered. The world had never been so divided and yet so united at the same time. After the alien distress signal was confirmed to be real, every country wanted to be part of the decision. Some called it a chance to prove that humanity was compassionate and ready to face the universe. Others saw it as a dangerous trap that could destroy the planet. News channels played the sound of the signal day and night. People listened to that strange rhythmic call, trying to imagine what kind of beings were asking for help from across the stars. Some cried, some prayed, and some trembled in fear. In a secure meeting room deep inside the United Earth Command headquarters, the world's leaders gathered through holographic screens. Tension filled the air. Scientists spoke of possibilities. Generals spoke of risks, and politicians spoke of consequences. "We can't ignore this," said Dr. Lena Torres, who had been invited as the signal's discoverer. "If they are truly dying, we may be their only hope." An older general frowned and replied, "Or they're luring us into a trap." The room fell silent. Lena looked around and said calmly, "Every great discovery in history started with risk. We can't pretend to be the only intelligent life in the galaxy anymore." They asked for help. "We must at least try to respond." After hours of arguing, the decision was made. Humanity would send a team, not a simple probe, not a recording, but a full expedition, a mission to reach the coordinates where the signal came from. It would be the most ambitious journey in human history, traveling far beyond known space. The project was named Operation Dawnreach, symbolizing the hope that humanity could bring light to another dying world. Soon the search began for the right people to join the mission. Military officers, scientists, engineers, doctors, only the best were chosen. Among them was Captain Aaron Blake, a decorated space pilot known for his calm leadership and sharp instincts. He had served on Mars, led rescue missions through meteor storms, and was respected by every crew who had flown under his command. When he was called into the meeting room and told the mission's purpose, he didn't hesitate. "If there are lives out there that need saving," he said, "then we go." Lina Torres was also selected as part of the mission. She would be responsible for communication, decoding alien signals, and studying their language. Though she had dreamed of reaching the stars, a part of her was afraid. The strange energy readings hidden in the distress call still haunted her, but her curiosity, stronger than her fear, pushed her to say yes. Preparations began immediately. The ship chosen for the journey was named Odyssey Dawn, a massive vessel designed for deep space exploration. It had powerful engines, artificial gravity, and advanced shielding systems. Inside, it was like a small floating city. Labs, quarters, a medical bay, and even a hydroponic garden to grow food during the long journey. Every screw and circuit was tested 1,000 times. Nothing could be left to chance. Around the world, people followed the mission's progress like a global event. Children drew pictures of the Odyssey. Couples prayed for the crew, and scientists debated what kind of beings they might meet. Some believed they would find peaceful aliens with wisdom far beyond human understanding. Others feared they would find ruins, or worse, enemies. The night before the launch, Lina stood by the ship, looking up at its gleaming metal hull under the floodlights. Captain Blake joined her quietly. "You ever think we're doing the wrong thing?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Every great adventure starts with that question." He nodded, glancing at the sky. "My father used to say humans have two instincts, fear and curiosity. The one you choose decides your destiny." When the launch day arrived, billions watched live as the Odyssey Dawn prepared for takeoff. The crew, dressed in sleek black and silver suits, stood proudly on the platform. As the countdown began, Lina whispered a small prayer. The engines roared to life, shaking the ground. Flames erupted beneath the ship, and with a thunderous sound, the Odyssey Dawn rose into the sky, leaving a trail of fire behind. The crowd below cheered and wept, not knowing if they would ever see those faces again. Once in space, Earth became a blue and white marble behind them. The crew fell silent for a moment, watching their home fade into the distance. For the first time, humanity had sent its people beyond the borders of the solar system. They were heading into the unknown, guided only by a message that might have come from hope or doom. The early weeks of the journey were calm. The crew settled into routines, running system checks, training, and studying the alien signal. Lina spent most of her time in the communication lab, decoding fragments and patterns. She began to notice that the signal seemed to be changing slightly, as if it was reacting to their movement. Sometimes it almost felt like the source knew they were coming. Captain Blake often visited her during these long hours. "You've barely slept," he'd say, handing her a cup of recycled coffee. "I can't stop thinking about it," she replied. "What if they're not alive when we get there?" Blake smiled softly. "Then we'll make sure their story isn't forgotten." But as the ship moved deeper into uncharted space, small problems began to appear. Power fluctuations. Strange readings on the radar. Once, the sensors detected a faint shadow following them, but when they tried to focus on it, the signal disappeared. Some of the crew began to whisper that they were being watched. Blake kept morale steady, reminding everyone that space was full of mysteries. Yet even he couldn't shake the feeling that something about this mission wasn't as simple as it seemed. Lina spent hours examining the coordinates. The dying star system they were heading toward had once hosted several planets, but according to old telescope data, one of them had collapsed centuries ago after a massive explosion. "If that's true," she told Blake, "then how are they still sending a signal?" He frowned. "Maybe their technology is more advanced than ours." She hesitated. Or maybe the signal isn't coming from the planet itself. That thought sent a chill down her spine. Back on Earth, not everyone supported the mission. Some groups protested, saying it was madness to answer a call from something unknown. "We are inviting danger," one famous scientist warned. Curiosity killed more than cats. It could end humanity. But the Odyssey was already millions of kilometers away, and nothing could stop it now. After nearly 6 months in space, the crew finally received an update from Earth. The message was short. "Continue. You are our hope." It reminded them that they were not just explorers. They were representatives of the entire human race. Their every action would define how the universe saw humanity. As they approached the last stretch of their journey, the alien signal grew stronger. It no longer sounded like a simple SOS. There were layers, whispers, and echoes, almost like voices beneath the main tone. Lena adjusted the receivers again and again, but the more she decoded, the more confused she became. Some of the words didn't translate to help. They translated to something darker. Warning, stay away. She took the findings to Captain Blake immediately. Look at this, she said, pointing at the decoded data. These symbols mean danger. The message isn't consistent. It's like someone changed it after it was sent. Blake studied it for a long moment, then said quietly, "We've come too far to turn back now." His words were steady, but his eyes revealed unease. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She sat by the observation window, staring at the endless stars. Somewhere ahead lay the source of the message. She wondered what kind of beings they would meet. Were they suffering and desperate, or something else entirely? She thought of the phrase that had haunted her since the beginning. They are coming. What if the message wasn't from the victims, but from the ones warning about them? When the ship finally entered the alien system, the entire crew gathered at the viewing deck. A massive red sun glowed weakly in the distance, surrounded by debris, broken planets, dust, and the remains of something artificial. It was both beautiful and terrifying. Lena whispered, "That's where the signal came from." Blake nodded, his face hard. "Then that's where we're going." For the first time, humanity stood on the edge of another civilization's ashes. No one knew what waited below, but deep inside, Lena felt a quiet dread. They had answered the call for help, but what if it was never meant for them? The Odyssey Dawn drifted silently into the alien star system, its hull reflecting the weak red light of a dying sun. The entire crew stood by the viewing deck, staring in stunned silence at the world below. The planet looked broken. Half of it was covered in jagged shadows, the other half glowing faintly like cooling embers after a great fire. Massive cracks split across its surface, and what might once have been oceans were now empty basins of ash. It was a world that had died, but somehow still whispered through the dark. Captain Aaron Blake gave a quiet command, and the ship began its descent. The closer they got, the more signs of destruction appeared. Cities reduced to twisted metal, enormous towers collapsed like bones, and what looked like glass planes stretched for miles. Lena Torres sat by her console, trying to pick up the exact location of the distress signal. The reading pulsed steadily from beneath the surface, deep underground. "It's coming from below," she said. "Something down there is still alive." The Odyssey landed carefully on a flat stretch of land near the coordinates. Dust swirled around the landing gear and a low wind howled across the ruins. The crew put on their suits and helmets, stepping out into the alien air. The ground crunched beneath their boots. There was no vegetation, no signs of animals, no sound except the wind. Lena looked around, feeling both awe and sorrow. "This place was once beautiful," she whispered. The exploration team spread out, scanning for energy sources. The readings led them toward a massive structure that had sunk halfway into the ground. It was made of black metal, shaped like a pyramid but smoother, as if it had been melted by heat. A large crack near its base opened into a dark tunnel. Blake looked at the opening, then at his team. "That's our way in," he said. Inside, their lights cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in strange markings. Some glowed faintly as they passed, reacting to human movement. The air was thin but breathable with filters. They moved slowly, deeper into the structure until they reached a chamber that pulsed with a dim blue light. In the center of the room stood tall, thin shapes, machines or perhaps pods. When Lena approached one, it hissed softly, and inside she saw movement. "Captain," she said, her voice trembling, "there's someone in here." The pod opened and a figure stumbled out, collapsing to the floor. It was humanoid, but not human. Its skin pale and smooth, almost translucent. Large black eyes blinked weakly, and its voice, when it spoke, sounded like wind through a hollow cave. "Help us," it said. The word was the same as in the signal. The crew froze. They had found survivors. Blake knelt beside the being, checking its vital signs. It was weak but alive. Soon, more pods began to open, releasing others, dozens of them, all fragile, all gasping for breath. Lena felt a strange mix of fear and pity. These were the ones who had called for help across the stars. Now they were right in front of her, not as monsters, but as dying souls. Through gestures and basic sound matching, they began to communicate. The alien who had first spoken introduced himself as Kareth, the leader of what remained of his kind. Using a small translation device Lena built from the ship's AI, they slowly began to understand fragments of his story. His people had lived on this planet for thousands of years, building great cities and exploring the stars. But then came a war, an enemy from beyond wielding terrible weapons. Their world was destroyed, their sun poisoned. Only a few hundred of them survived, hiding underground in stasis chambers, hoping someone would one day find them. Lena listened carefully, her mind racing with questions. "Who attacked you?" she asked through the translator. Kareth's face darkened. "They were like us, but stronger. They took our worlds. We tried to fight. We failed." Captain Blake looked around at the ruins visible through cracks in the ceiling. "You've been down here for centuries," he said quietly. Kareth nodded. "Time is us nothing. Survival is all." The crew set up temporary shelters inside the chamber, bringing medical supplies and food. The aliens couldn't eat human food, but Lena worked with the biologist to synthesize nutrient gel from the ship's reserves. Slowly, the survivors regained some strength. They thanked the humans with slow bows and soft tones that sounded like songs. But as the days passed, strange things began to happen. Equipment on the ship started malfunctioning. Power levels fluctuated. Communications with Earth became unstable. The engineers couldn't explain it. "It's like something's draining the energy," one of them said. Lena began to notice something else. The aliens avoided talking about their technology. When she asked about the machines in the lower tunnels, Kareth would always change the subject. "Old things," he'd say. "Forgotten." But one night, while checking her sensors, Lena picked up a transmission. It was faint but clear, and it was coming from the alien base itself, directed outward into space. She traced the source of the signal to a sealed door deep in the structure. She called Captain Blake, and together they opened it carefully. Behind the door was a massive chamber filled with glowing crystals and humming machinery. In the center stood a console, alien in design but eerily familiar. The language scrolling across it looked like the same pattern from the first SOS signal, but this one was different. It wasn't broadcasting a call for help. It was sending coordinates, Earth's coordinates. Lena's heart dropped. "Captain," she whispered, "they're not asking for help anymore. They're calling something. To us." Blake stared at the console, his jaw tightening. "Can you shut it down?" She tried, but the controls responded as if alive. The machine pulsed faster, feeding on energy from the Odyssey's reactor through a cable connection the aliens must have secretly made. They were stealing power to strengthen the transmission. Suddenly, Kareth appeared at the doorway, his dark eyes cold and unreadable. "You should not have come here," he said slowly through the translator. "Your world will bring what we need." Blake drew his sidearm instinctively, but Kareth didn't flinch. More of his kind appeared behind him, their frail forms no longer seeming weak. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the machine's light. Lena realized with horror that the entire rescue had been a trap. The SOS had been bait. The aliens weren't victims, they were conquerors waiting to rise again. "You said you needed help," Lena said, her voice shaking. Kareth's expression was almost sad. "We do, but not mercy. Power." The chamber trembled as the energy surge intensified. The aliens' technology, once dormant, began to hum with renewed strength. Structures outside started to shift and rise like something awakening after a long sleep. The ground rumbled under their feet. "They're reactivating their weapons!" one of the engineers shouted through the comms. Blake's voice cut through the noise. "Get back to the ship now!" The crew ran through the tunnels as alarms blared. Alien machines crawled from the shadows, half mechanical, half organic. The humans fought to reach the surface while the ground shook violently. Dust and debris rained down as parts of the base collapsed. Lena looked back once and saw Kareth standing among the rising machines, watching them flee. His final words echoed through the comm system. "Your kindness is your weakness." When the crew reached the surface, the once dead planet now glowed with dark energy. Towers that had lain broken began to rise again, powered by the stolen reactor output from their ship. Blake ordered everyone aboard, and the Odyssey Dawn lifted off just as explosions rippled across the surface. From orbit, they could see the alien structures forming a massive pattern, something like a signal beacon. It pulsed once, twice, then released a powerful burst of light into space. Inside the ship, Lena slumped into her chair, her hands trembling. "They used us," she whispered. Blake stood beside her, staring at the view outside. "No," he said quietly. "Not yet. This isn't over." The crew was shaken but alive. The realization sank in. Humanity had walked into a trap, but they weren't finished. The aliens had made one mistake. They thought humans were easy prey. They didn't understand that when humans were betrayed, they didn't surrender. They fought back. As the Odyssey moved away from the cursed planet, Lena looked at the data she had gathered. Hidden in the signal patterns were fragments of another message, one the aliens hadn't meant for them to find. It was a log, a record of what had destroyed their world. She decoded the final line and her blood ran cold. It said, "The enemy comes from the stars. Beware those who answer the call." The meaning was clear now. The message had been both a plea and a warning. Humanity had answered the wrong one, and somewhere out in the vast dark, something else had heard it too. The Odyssey Dawn floated above the dying planet, its engines humming quietly in the silence of space. The crew was shaken, exhausted, and angry. The truth of what had just happened weighed heavily on everyone. They had come all this way to save a civilization, to offer help, to show compassion. But they had been used. The aliens had lied. The distress signal had been nothing more than bait to bring humans close enough to steal what they needed. Inside the control room, Captain Aaron Blake stood in front of the main display, watching as the scanners showed the planet below coming back to life. Huge black towers were rising from the surface like claws. Rivers of glowing blue energy spread across the landscape, connecting the towers together in a massive grid. Whatever power the aliens had stolen from the Odyssey's reactor was now being used to rebuild their world, or maybe to create a weapon. Lena Torres was typing quickly on her console, her hands shaking. "They're draining our energy faster than before," she said. "If this continues, our reactor will collapse." Blake turned to his engineer, Commander Hensley. "Cut every connection between us and that planet." The engineer nodded and started working, but the system flashed red. "They've locked our systems, Captain." "I can't shut it off," Blake's jaw tightened. "They're using our ship as a power source and a transmitter. If they finish whatever they're doing, Earth could be the next target." Lena's eyes widened. "They're sending another signal," she whispered. She traced the data stream, her stomach turning as she saw the destination. Earth. The aliens weren't calling for help anymore. They were calling others, using Earth's coordinates as the message's endpoint. Humanity wasn't the savior. They were the prey being marked for harvest. The control room filled with panic. "Captain, what do we do?" one of the officers asked. Blake's voice was calm but cold. "We fight." He looked at Lena. "Can you find a way to reverse the power flow? If we can overload their system, we might be able to shut them down." She hesitated. "That could destroy the entire base and maybe the ship too." Blake nodded. "Then we make sure we're not on it when it happens." He called the crew to the main deck. "Listen carefully," he said. "They tricked us, but they made one mistake. They underestimated us. We're going to stop them before they bring their war to Earth." His voice carried strength even though everyone could see the exhaustion in his eyes. Humans were good at one thing: surviving against impossible odds. A small strike team, including Blake, Lena, and 2 engineers, prepared to return to the planet's surface. Their goal was simple: get inside the alien base, reroute the power feed, and set it to overload. It was suicide and everyone knew it, but no one argued. Before they left, Blake looked at Lena. "If anything happens to me, you finish the job." She met his eyes, fear and determination mixing in her voice. "We finish it together." The shuttle dropped through the atmosphere, shaking violently as they descended. The once dead world was now alive with activity. Alien drones flew across the sky and lightning-like energy arced between the towers. The ground glowed in places where the energy grid had melted the rock. The crew landed near the same ruins they had visited before, now completely transformed. The Black Pyramid had risen to its full height, pulsing like a living heart. They entered through a side tunnel, moving quickly and quietly. Inside, the walls were no longer cold and dead. They were alive, covered with veins of blue light that pulsed with rhythm. The deeper they went, the louder the hum became. Lena carried a portable reactor link scanner, tracing the source of the power flow. "The main core is below us," she said. "If we can reroute it back into the planetary grid, it'll overload everything connected to it." As they reached the central chamber, They saw Kareth waiting for them. He no longer looked weak or dying. His body glowed faintly with energy, and his voice echoed strangely when he spoke. "You should not have come back," he said. "Your world is strong. Its energy will help us rise again. You will be remembered as the ones who saved us." Blake raised his weapon. "You lied to us. You used us." Kareth tilted his head slightly. "We did what your kind has always done. Take what is needed to survive. You call it conquest. We call it evolution." Before Blake could answer, several alien drones floated into the chamber, their weapons glowing. The humans took cover and opened fire. Blue sparks and red light filled the air. Lena crawled toward the main console, connecting her device. "I need 30 seconds, she shouted. The engineers covered her while Blake fought his way closer to Kareth. Kareth moved fast, faster than Blake expected, striking with inhuman strength. Blake stumbled but countered, firing his plasma rifle point blank. The alien staggered, smoke rising from his chest, but he didn't fall. "You cannot stop us," Kareth hissed. "We were gods once. We will be gods again," Blake glared at him. "Then this god bleeds." He fired again, and the shot hit the alien square in the heart. Kareth fell, his glowing eyes dimming. "Captain, it's ready," Lena shouted. Blake limped to the console. "Do it." Lena entered the final sequence. The room began to shake violently. The machine screamed. The lights flickered, and the blue veins on the walls turned red. The power grid was reversing, sending the stolen energy back into the core. "We need to get out," one of the engineers yelled. They ran through collapsing tunnels as explosions rocked the base. Flames and debris fell around them. The ground cracked open, revealing rivers of molten light. Outside, the towers were crumbling, their energy lines bursting like fireworks. The shuttle awaited them, shaking from the shock waves. Blake pushed Lena aboard just as another explosion tore through the ground. The shuttle blasted off, climbing rapidly into the dark sky. Below them, the entire planet glowed brighter and brighter, until it erupted in a massive burst of white light. The explosion spread like a wave, swallowing the alien towers and the base completely. Within minutes, the world that had deceived them was nothing more than dust and silence. Inside the shuttle, no one spoke for a long time. The only sound was the hiss of the engines and the faint hum of the life support systems. Blake sat in his seat, staring out the window at the fading glow of the destroyed planet. "They'll never send another signal again," he said quietly. Lena leaned back, her eyes wet with tears. "We were supposed to save them," she said softly. Blake looked at her. "Maybe we did. Maybe this was mercy." When they returned to the Odyssey Dawn, the remaining crew cheered and cried. They had all feared the worst, but when they saw the shuttle docking, hope returned. The ship had suffered heavy damage from the energy drain, but it was still alive, just like its crew. Lena uploaded the data she had gathered from the alien base before it exploded. It contained fragments of their history, their war, and the message that had lured humanity across the stars. The truth was more complicated than anyone imagined. The aliens had once ruled over many worlds, enslaving other species. When they were finally defeated by a stronger enemy, they were left broken and forgotten. Their pride refused to die, so they built a trap, an SOS designed to attract new victims. And humanity had walked right into it. But they hadn't expected humans to fight back with such fury. The aliens had seen compassion as weakness, but they hadn't understood that compassion could turn into strength when betrayed. The humans didn't just survive, they struck back harder than anyone imagined. Later, as the Odyssey prepared to leave the system, Lena stood by the window, watching the stars. "Do you think anyone else heard their signal?" she asked. Blake joined her, his face thoughtful. "Maybe. But if they did, they'll only find ashes now." There was a long silence between them. Then Blake said quietly, "You know, they were right about one thing." Lena turned to him. "What's that?" He looked out at the dark void. "Humans do bring power. Just not the kind they wanted." The Odyssey Dawn turned its engines toward home. Behind them, the remains of the alien world drifted like dust among the stars. The mission had started with hope and ended with fire. They had gone to help, but they returned with a message of their own. Earth was not weak. Humans might come with open hands, but if you tried to betray them, those hands would turn into fists. As the ship moved farther away, the crew watched the stars grow brighter again. Somewhere deep inside, Lena knew that this was not the end. The universe was vast, and there were others out there. Some might seek peace, others power. But after what had happened, one truth was clear. No one would ever mistake human kindness for weakness again. The Odyssey Dawn was on its way back to Earth, drifting quietly through the endless blackness of space. The crew had survived the impossible, but no one felt victorious. The silence on the ship was heavy, filled with memories of the world they had destroyed and the truth they had uncovered. The aliens had tricked them, drained their power, and almost used Earth's location to summon others. The humans had stopped them, but the cost was great. Captain Aaron Blake stood in the observation bay looking out at the stars. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, tired and haunted. He had made the hardest decision of his life, and it would stay with him forever. Lena Torres entered quietly, holding 2 metal cups of synthetic coffee. She handed one to him and said, "You haven't slept in 2 days, Captain." Blake smiled faintly. "Sleep doesn't come easy after what we've done." He took a sip, his eyes never leaving the stars. "We went there to save a dying world. We came back after destroying it." Lena leaned against the railing beside him. "We didn't have a choice. If we hadn't done it, Earth would have been next." Her voice was calm, but there was pain in it. "Still, it doesn't feel like a victory." Blake nodded slowly. "It never does when you have to fight something you tried to help." He turned to her. "But what matters is that we learned something about who we are." The Odyssey continued its journey for weeks. The crew worked silently, repairing damaged systems, cleaning up the reactor, and sending fragments of data back to Earth through deep space transmissions. Each night, some of them gathered in the mess hall to talk softly, to share memories of home, to remind each other that they were still human after everything. One evening, as the ship glided past a field of asteroids, Lena sat at her console analyzing the last recordings from the alien base. Most of the files were corrupted, but a few images and voices had survived. She saw what looked like children, alien children, running through ruins before everything turned dark. For a moment, she wondered if they had wiped out the last innocent survivors of a fallen civilization. Her heart sank. She turned off the screen and buried her face in her hands. Blake approached quietly from behind. "You can't keep doing this to yourself," he said gently. She looked up, tears in her eyes. "What if we were wrong? What if they weren't all like Kareth?" Blake sat beside her. "Maybe they weren't," he admitted, "but we couldn't take the risk. They would have destroyed us all. Sometimes doing the right thing means living with the guilt of it." He looked at her. "We carry that so others don't have to." A week later, Earth's command center finally responded. The Odyssey Dawn's transmission had reached them, and now a live communication appeared on the main screen. Admiral Sullivan's face appeared, an older man with sharp eyes and a calm voice. "Captain Blake, we received your report. Is the situation contained?" Blake stood tall, his voice steady. "Yes, sir. The alien world is gone. Their technology was destroyed. They can't send another signal." Sullivan nodded. "You did what you had to do. The Council commends your crew's bravery." He paused for a moment. "But we've analyzed your data. That signal, they didn't just send it once. There are traces of it bouncing across the outer systems. Others may have heard it before you shut it down." The crew exchanged worried looks. Blake frowned. "You mean there could be others out there who answered it?" "Possibly," Sullivan said. "We're monitoring. Be ready for anything. The galaxy knows we exist now. That changes everything." The transmission ended, leaving a heavy silence in the control room. Blake looked at Lena. "We thought we were alone in the dark," he said. "Now the dark knows our name." The next days were filled with tension. The Odyssey was still weeks away from Earth, and the thought of other civilizations hearing the alien signal haunted everyone. What if someone stronger, more dangerous, came looking for whoever destroyed Kareth's world? One night, alarms went off across the ship. Red lights flashed, and the sound of the siren echoed through the halls. Lena ran to the control deck. "What's happening?" she asked breathlessly. Lieutenant Harris pointed at the radar. "Unidentified object on long-range sensors. It's following us." Blake arrived seconds later. "Distance?" 17,000 kilometers and closing. Lena's heart pounded. "Could it be debris?" Harris shook his head. "It's moving too fast, and it's tracking us." The crew watched as the radar blip moved closer. Everyone braced for impact or attack. But as minutes passed, the object slowed down. The screen flickered, showing what looked like a small vessel, sleek and glowing faintly blue. "It wasn't one of theirs," Lena whispered. "It's alien." Blake stared at it for a long moment. "Open a channel," he said. Static filled the speakers for several seconds before a faint, distorted voice came through. It was calm and oddly human-like. "Humans, you destroyed the signal." Lena froze. The voice continued. "You ended their cycle. We have been watching." Blake's voice was steady but cautious. "Who are you?" There was a long silence. Then the voice said, "We are not your enemy. We are what they feared, and now because of you they are gone." The signal cut off. The strange vessel stopped following and disappeared into the darkness. The crew was silent, trying to process what had just happened. "They were watching us," Lena said quietly. "Whoever they are, they know what we did." Blake turned to the crew. "Set a course for Earth, maximum speed." For the next several days, everyone was on edge. No one slept much. Every noise, every flicker of light made them jump, but no other ships appeared. When Earth finally came into view, a blue and white marble against the black void, the entire crew felt relief wash over them. Home had never looked so beautiful. As they entered orbit, messages of celebration came flooding in from Earth. Humanity had its first true encounter with intelligent alien life, and had survived. The Odyssey Dawn became a symbol of both courage and warning. The story of what happened was classified, but rumors spread quickly. People called it the fatal alien mistake, because the aliens had made one terrible error: asking humans for help and thinking they could control them. In the following weeks, the crew went through long debriefings and medical checks. Everyone was safe, but no one was the same. They had seen things no human had seen before. They had learned that compassion could be dangerous, and that survival sometimes required fire. One evening, the surviving crew members gathered on a beach near the Pacific launch site. The sun was setting and the sky was painted in gold and red. Lena stood with her feet in the sand, watching the waves crash softly. Blake joined her. "It feels strange," she said quietly, "being back on Earth after everything up there." Blake nodded. "The stars look different now. They used to mean wonder. Now they mean warning." Lena looked at him. "Do you think we'll ever go back?" He smiled faintly. "We will, humans always do. Curiosity is our curse and our gift." They stood in silence for a while, watching the horizon. Then Blake said, "You know, the aliens thought asking us for help would make them safe. They didn't realize that when humans care, they care with everything they have. When you betray that care, you wake something stronger." Lena nodded slowly. They called it a mistake. But maybe it was a lesson for everyone. As the sun disappeared, the stars began to appear one by one. Somewhere out there in the endless darkness, other civilizations were listening, watching, waiting. Some would see humans as allies. Others would see them as threats. But one thing was certain: no one would ever underestimate them again. Blake turned to his crew. "If they come," he said quietly, "they'll find us ready." The waves crashed softly and the sky grew darker. The Odyssey Dawn would soon return to the stars, but this time with new purpose. Humanity had learned that kindness was not weakness, and that even in the cold void of space, the human spirit burned brighter than any sun, and so, the story of the fatal alien mistake became a legend, a warning across the stars that sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the universe is not hatred or greed, but the unbreakable will of those who only wanted to help.